Hi, happy Diwali to everybody who's watching this session. Let's crack management exams. Since you're here, you obviously, even in the middle of this festival season, are looking to prepare for a management exam like CAT, GMAT, etc. Uh, Unacademy is one of the best platforms for you to further your management aspirations. And so join Unacademy, guys. My name is Anand Venkateshan. I'm an educator with Unacademy. And I come with credentials of having done engineering from VIT and postgrad from IIM Bangalore. I then joined an FMCG company, worked for about 4 years there, and decided somewhere along the line that education was where my passions lied in. So for the past decade or so, I've been training students for management exams. I've helped students get into the IIMs, ISB, schools abroad, and basically through exams such as the GMAT, CAT, IFT, NMAT, XAT, well, you name it, I've probably helped somebody crack the exam or get through the PIWAT stages. Well, that's about me. Here's what you get on the Unacademy platform. This session obviously is brought to you by Unacademy. It's my duty to tell you that, in fact, it's not so much of a duty, it's something I do with pleasure. Unacademy is probably the best place to learn online at this juncture, and I say that with confidence because I think on the learning journey, even if it is classroom or otherwise, I think the pivotal role is played in your learning journey by the mentor. And on the Unacademy app, you have these subject matter experts who come in and take live lectures on almost a daily basis, and you have this vast choice of mentors to choose from, and it's not like you need to choose them day to day. You can actually choose them in batches. So you attend daily live classes, but overall what happens is that you get structure to your preparation, and I think that's the key thing that a mentor brings, and that's a key thing that a planned program or a batch brings to an aspirant such as you. The other things along the way are also there. The Unacademy platform has mock tests going live almost on a weekly basis. There are topic tests that you can use to work on individual areas. There's a scholarship test happening right now, which is also on a weekly basis. There are exciting prizes to be won, and the best thing is that there is unlimited access to all of this, whether it's classes, educators, courses, batches, or even tests and quizzes. Unlimited access, which means that you can, as long as a subscription is valid, you can view anything any number of times. You can view as much as you want. So the usage entirely depends on you, and I think that's the clincher, right? Like I said, educators come with vast amount of experience. I've already told you. Besides cracking the CAT, I've also written CAT in successive years. I've been scoring 99 percentile overall and in the quant section without fail. We understand what it takes for you to prepare, and this mentorship, this bond can be developed on a platform that's as interactive as the Unacademy app. Well, there are two kinds of courses that are created, or two kinds of classes that are created on the app. These are called the special and plus classes, right? Special classes are basically, think of them as trial classes, right? Where educators can come in. It's a trial for both educators and for students. Educators come in, they tell you this is their style of teaching. If you like it, you join their upcoming batches. In fact, educators probably also run entire courses on the special classes too. But this is free of cost, right? Plus is available to you only if you subscribe, and the advantages are that you get a larger sort of pool of classes to choose from on almost a daily basis. There's more sessions in Plus. There's more batch options in Plus, right? Which means that you can choose to join multiple batches, not just one. And you can rewatch those recordings. It's a lot of fun. It's batches where doubt classes are also built in. You can practice. Once you subscribe, you get access to the topic test and the mocks. You can get all of that if you subscribe for Plus, right? Well, batches, I've been talking about batches, right? Two advantages with batches. One, obviously, third advantage I've already talked about. You can choose as many batches as you want. But batches are also tactical, which means that they depend on your context within your preparation stage, which means that if you're somebody who's looking at next year's CAT, and you have a year to go for it, then you'd want to take the basic concepts and do them slowly, maybe over weekends or a couple of days over the week, right? On the other hand, if you're somebody who's looking at an exam which is 2 to 3 months away, like a GMAT course, then you want something which is a little more intensive, a little more involving, and also more detailed, right? Maybe not as detailed as a longer term one, but still enough for you to crack the exam. If you're 3 months away from an exam, there's also a chance that you're looking at practice more than basic concept building, or you want help in specific areas like grammar or reading comprehension or algebra, right? So these kind of batches get created very very regularly on the Unacademy Plus courses. Well, all you need to do to access Plus is just subscribe to one of these plans. You can see plans go from a month, 12 months, 24 months, everything in between. Well, my only advice will be choose something. Be wise about your choice, and when in doubt, go for the longer term program. I say this with absolute certainty because the cost per hour reduces successively, and I mean, I know it shouldn't be a metric you're looking at, but I think what I'm trying to tell you is the longer you give yourself, the more utilization you can make. And the second reason I would say is that as time goes by, the educators on the platform can really come in and create a lot of can help you not just with the written test, but also for softer aspects like personality, how to present yourself in an interview, how to build your story, how to write essays better, how to create an impact there, essentially how to ace the admission process, and all of that happens if you have more time at your disposal. Don't forget to use my subscription code, that's AV01, that's shown right at the bottom of your screen. This gives you a 10% discount on any of these subscription plans, so don't forget to do that. I mentioned a scholarship test, right? There's a test that happens every Sunday. It's the National Scholarship Test by Unacademy. Well, it might not have the big prize, but 50 winners get Amazon vouchers, man, and that's every week, every single week. So if you ask me, I think there's not, even if there isn't a much upside in terms of prize value, I think a 5,000 rupee voucher is cool enough if I can manage to grab it every once in a while. And I think the obvious plus is that this will also allow me to benchmark myself. Am I in the top 50 or not? Because it's a large base of students all India, right? So even if you can get in the top 50 once or twice, a few times, I think it's worth fighting for. Well, that was the intro to Unacademy, the app. If you haven't already done so, please download the app today. Please do register, try out some of the special classes I've run a lot of special classes, so do check out some of my videos there. You can look for me, Anand Venkatesh. Alternatively, I also have a plus batch running for CAT 2021. It's titled Extreme Batch 2021. It's a batch which is mentored by 3 IIM Bangalore graduates. It's very exciting, and I think the bunch of the batch is definitely something that you should look forward to if you join me on the platform. Right. So what do we do today? We're discussing data sufficiency, and sorry, we're doing number challenge. This is the topic for the day. We've done enough. I've done enough classes around number properties with CAT a month away. Maybe a lot of you are also looking at GMAT. Numbers is a very very important topic for any entrance exam. So I thought, why not do a quick sort of challenge session on number properties. Think of it like 25 question speed bump. Every question I'm going to give a slight pause, and then at that point you probably should pause your video, try the question yourself, and see the solution right at the end, right? So that's the format I'm going to follow. Right, I'm excited. I hope you are. Let's get into today's session. Here's the first question on your screen. There's a list K which consists of 12 consecutive integers. If -4 is the least integer in list K, what is the range of positive integers in the list? I'm going to start solving, so if you want to try the question yourself, right now is a good time to pause. Right. So what do I know? I know that the list of numbers I have starts from -4, and I have 12 of them. So I can start imagining this: -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, right? And since there are 12 of them, I've already counted 5 which are 0, which are 4 negative and 1 positive. That leaves me with 7 more numbers, so that's going to be 1 all the way till 7, right? If so, I've accounted for these 12 numbers. What is the range? Now, what does range mean? Range is a statistical measure which basically is the difference between the max and the min values. So, what is the range of positive integers in the list, right? Note the term here, positive integers, which means we want the range of this set of values. And so maximum is 7 and minimum is 1. 7 minus 1 is 6. That's the right answer, option D, right? Fairly simple. I think it's one that you should really crack under 30 seconds. But step by step, I hope you're beginning to see that this question was quite easy. Right. Next question. Here's the question. If x, I'm going to pause for a second here, but if you guys are watching in, then at this point, you'll probably look at the question, pause the video, try it yourself, and then come back, watch the solution. Right. If x is the sum of 6 consecutive integers, then x is divisible by which of the following? Note that it says sum of 6 consecutive integers. It doesn't say with 6, right? But if this is a general statement, it should apply to a specific case too. And that's an approach I really like to apply in such problems. So I'll basically assume that the values are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. I'll assume the first 6 integers. If x is their sum, which means the sum would be n into n plus 1 by 2. Right? That's 21. Alright. Then 21 is divisible by which of the following? Is it divisible by 3? Yes. Is it divisible by 4? No. Is it divisible by 6? No. Right? So if 21 isn't, then I'm sure that these two cannot be the answers, right? Any answer involving 2 and 3 cannot be right. With 3, yeah, I'm thinking maybe with 6, these 6 values, maybe the sum I got was divisible by 3. I'm not sure if it will be true every time, but if it's not true for these 6 values, it won't be true for, then it's not always true. So I can definitely rule out anything that includes 2 and 3. So which means that these options go away. Right, and that only leaves me with one, which is option A, the right choice. Right, so the answer to question number 2, option A. All right, here's the next question, question number 3. Right, pause the video if you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and solve this question. If A be an even integer and B be an odd integer, such that A is greater than B and both of these integers are greater than 0, then which of the following represents the number of odd numbers, right? So again, it's even before I read the question further, I know A is an even value, B is an odd value, both integers which are positive, and A must be greater than B. So even value 8 is greater than an odd value, let's say 3, right? So this is A and this is B from this point onwards. Which of the following represents the number of odd numbers greater than B and less than A, right? So we're talking about a range of values which includes these numbers. Which of the following represents the number of odd integers in this range? So 5 and 7. How many? Answer I'm getting is 2. Right? So let me just plug these values and see which gives me 2. 8 minus 3 by 2 is not going to be 2. 8 minus 3, 5. 5 plus 1, 6. 6 by 2 is 3. 8 minus 3, 5. 5 minus 1, 4. 4 by 2 is 2. 8 minus 3, 5. 5 by 2 and a half minus 1 is 1 and a half. And this is also 5, right? So the correct choice, only option C. It only fits one option. Right, here's the next question coming up on your screen. If you're watching it, then pause the video and try the question yourself. Okay, the question says that there is a list S which consists of the positive integers that are multiples of 9. Okay, I'm thinking positive multiples of 9. I'm thinking first positive value will be 9. Then I have 18. Essentially the table of 9, right? 9 into 1, 9 into 2, 18, 9 into 3, 27. And I can go all the way till 9 into 11, 99. Okay. So list and it does say less than 100, so that's why I stopped at 99, right? So how many multiples are these? Now if you write them as multiples of 9, then you can see I go from the first multiple to the 11th multiple, and when I go from 1 to 11, I'll have 11 values, so 11 numbers here. All right. What is the median of the integers in S? This is what S is composed of. So what is their median value? Median is the middle term. Now, I don't know if you remember this or if you know this already, but at first I'll do an inference. The inference, first the observation here is that all these values form an arithmetic progression, right? You can see that, right? Successive multiples do form an AP because they'll have the same difference, right? All of them have a difference of 9. So they do form an AP. And when a range of values given to you forms an AP, when numbers form an AP, then for the set of numbers, the average is always equal to the middle value. Okay, but that's useless here. But both of these are also equal to the first plus last number divided by 2. Right? That's also something which is always true, and that's the thing I'm going to use here. I know this is an AP. I know I have 11 terms in that AP, and I want the middle value. So all I need to do is add the first and the last terms, right? So 9 plus 99 by 2 will be the median. What do I get? I get 108 whole divided by 2. That's 54. So that's going to be my answer here, option D. Right? It's a trick method, right? You can obviously check this, right? If you are unsure, then you can check this, because you do know that the middle value, median. The formula for the median is that if you have an odd number of values, then the median will be the n plus 1 by 2th term, which means in this case it's going to be the 11 plus 1, 12, 12 by 2, that's the 6th term, and 6th term of an AP will be first term plus n minus 1, so you want the 6th term, so 5 times common difference, which is 9, so I get 45 plus 9, which is 54, which is exactly what we anyhow got, right? But the thing is that it will be easier if you directly you directly figure out that it's the first and last by 2, right? Because that's much easier. All right. Here's the next question. Question number 5. Option choices shown here. We're only going to do problem solving kind of questions, which means I'll give you choices for every question. No theta or data sufficiency kind of problems, at least none today. Pause the video if you'd like to solve this question yourself, and go ahead and discuss after I get myself a drink of water. Right, where were we? The function f is defined for each positive 3-digit integer n. Alright, so you're given an n, which is a 3-digit number. The moment I want to imagine this, I'm already thinking that the number be ABC. Right? The function f is defined for n, so f of n, which is the same as f of ABC, is defined as 2 to the power x, 3 to the power y, 5 to the power z, where x, y and z are the hundreds, tens and units. Oh, okay, so x, y, z is in fact the number itself. Alright, so let's forget ABC, right? So this is going to be f of x, y, z equals 2 power x into 3 power y into 5 power z. Okay, so take its digits and put it in the powers. That becomes the function value. If m and v are 3-digit positive integers such that f of m is equal to 9 times f of v. Alright, so this is the condition given over here. Two numbers m and v are such that f of m is 9 times f of v, right? F of m, so instead of assuming two different set of values for m and v, what I can do is I can do a curious observation, right? If I write it like this, f of m by f of v, is equal to 9, which means 3 square, right? So what I know is that some representation of powers of 2, 3 and 5 in the numerator and denominator will get cancelled out. I'll be left with only the power 2, right? What this means is that if you have, okay, let me just write it and show you. 2 power x, 3 power y, 5 power z, let's say is for m, and let's say it's 2 power a, 3 power b and 5 power c for v. Assuming that m is xyz and v is abc, then you'll have 2 power x minus a into 3 power y minus b into 5 power z minus c equals 3 square, right? Which means the powers of 2 and 5 are 0, whereas the power of 3 is 2, right? So you'll basically say x is a, z is c, and y minus b is 2, which means y is equal to b plus 2. So the question says, what is the difference between the two numbers? What you know is that basically you're adding two 3-digit numbers which have the first digit and the last digit same, right? So you're thinking, okay, I'm subtracting a something c from a something c, and this is 2 more than this, and if you're subtracting them, then 0 0, and here I'll get 2, right? So the difference will be 20. Does that make sense, right? Because the first and the last, we've already at the bottom we've already figured out that the first and the last digits x and y equal, x and z equal a and c respectively, right? But it's just that the middle value is 2 more, and if it's 2 more, you'll get a difference. When you're subtracting, you'll get 2 in the denominator, 2 in the difference, and the other differences will be 0. But obviously you don't care about the hundreds place difference. You do care though about what is the difference of unit digits, so you'll know difference is 20, right? There's another way of understanding this. If this isn't immediately obvious to you, then another way in which you can understand this is also to say that place values, right? So for xyz, the place values are 100x. Then the values, if you multiply digits with their place values, 100x plus 10y plus z, and the corresponding, oops, I probably should have written, minus for ABC, so 100a plus 10b plus c. Okay. And clearly if x and a are equal, then 100x and 100a will be equal. If z and c are equal, z and c will get cancelled out, and on all you'll be left with will be 10 times y minus b, and you already know y minus b is 2, so this will be 10 times 2, 20. Right? That's another way of figuring the same out. Alright, this is question number 5. Let's move on to question number 6. What is the sum of odd integers from 35 to 85? Right? That should ring a bell, right? Remember, you're talking about sum of odd integers. So basically from 35 to 85, 35, 37, 39. Just write this, and something I just talked about will kick in, right? What did we talk about? What is this? You notice a common difference of 2, which means this is an AP. And for this AP, what do you want? You want the sum of values, right? So the sum of values for an AP will be average into the number of values, and for an AP you know that the average is easy to calculate, right? Average is first plus last by 2, or the middle value into n. So let's try and calculate it this way. First number I know is 35, last number I know is 85. This divided by 2, and then you'll multiply it with the number of values. How many values do I have? So if this is the nth term, then a plus n minus 1 into d must be the last term, right? Common difference is 2 because these are odd integers. So there you go, n minus 1, 2n minus 2, and I'm taking the 35 to the other side, will be 85 minus 35, that's 50, which means n will be 50 plus 2, 52, divided by 2, 52 by 2 is 26. So you have 26 values, so I'll multiply this with 26. What do I get? I get 85 plus 35 is 120, 120 by 2 into 26. This is 26 into 60, that's 1560, that's option A. So there you go, the sum of odd integers from A to B. You could have used the AP formula. I mean, if after calculating the value of n, you could have also used the sum of AP formula, right? That's not so hard, but I think if you can get used to this way of thinking, right? All of this is in your head, remember. you start directly start from this point to calculate, and that's the answer, right? And so if you can figure this out, the AP approach, the middle term approach, uh, I think it'll be faster solving such problems. Okay, here is the next question, number 7. Uh, you guys can start trying this question. I'll start discussing in a moment's notice. Right, let's go ahead and discuss this. One side of a parking stall is defined by a straight stripe that consists of n painted sections. All right, okay. So basically, you have painted sections of equal length, right? Oops, too bigger. Yeah, so let's say this is something which is painted, and then you have a gap between painted section. So this keeps on happening till you reach the last painted section, right? And so it says the unpainted section is half as long, right? Which means if this length is, so you could assume x and x by 2, but I prefer to assume this to be x and then this to be 2x, right? I mean, it doesn't look so neat, so let me show you another way. Right, this gap versus this gap. So if this gap is x, then this gap will be 2x, right? Double the width, which basically means that if you consider one gap and one painted portion as a single unit, then this unit will be 3x, right? But the only problem is that if you imagine it, it will end. The last one that you get will end here, right? Which means that in the end you won't have x, you'll have 2x only, right? So your basically your total length, right? How many strips do you have? You have n painted strips, but one of those you won't count. So for n minus strips, you'll have portions of length 3x, but for the last strip, you'll have a portion only of length 2x. So the total length that you have will be this, right? I hope that makes sense to you. So this becomes 3x into n, so that's 3x, or basically I can take x common, and that becomes 3n plus 2 into x sorry yeah, so that becomes x into 3n minus 3 plus 2, which means it becomes 3n minus 1 into x. Alright, so this is the total length which is given to me as 203 inches. So this is equal to 203, and that should immediately ring a bell, because this is like product of two things is 203, which means these are factors of the number 203, right? And so let's factorize 203. A quick check, with 7, right? I know it's not 2, it's not 3, it's not divisible by 3, but if you check with 5, 5 obviously it's not 7. So 7 2s are 14, and I'm left with 6 and 63. 7 9s are 60. So it's like 29 into 7, which means x can either be 7 or 29, and 3n minus 1 correspondingly will take other values. But it also says that the length of each unpainted section, which means the gap x, basically it's also saying that x cannot be 1, because it's possible that it's 1 into 2 203, right? So it's basically saying x cannot be 1. X has to be an integer greater than, each unpainted section should have a length which is an integer value greater than 2. It can't be 1, which means it has to be, if it can't be 1, it has to be 7 or 29 or 203. Those are possibilities. So what is the value of n, right? So if x is 7, then 3n minus 1 will be 3n minus 1 will be 29, which means 3n is equal to 30, or n is equal to 30 by 3, which is 10. So that's the possible value for n, option C. Yeah, Certainly hope that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know if there is anything else to speak about in this question. Let's move on to the next problem. Yeah, this actually, you know, another way in which this kind of a problem is presented is in a more direct way. The more direct way of presenting a question like this is to say, okay, if okay, forget it. I don't really remember right now. I mean, nothing comes to my mind right now. No values. Right. Here's question number 8. Do try this. How many integers between 1 and 16 inclusive means? So even though it says between, it also says inclusive, right? So that's like kind of contradictory, but what I gather is that it will include both, right? So 1 to 16 values have exactly 3 different positive integer factors. Okay, so 3 different factors. Well, question talks about number of factors. Now I don't know how many of you know about the number of factors, but here's a quick sort of recap or a small funda portion on number of factors. So the concept is that if you take a number n which can be broken down into its primes as prime 1 into raised to the power a, prime 2 raised to the power b. Basically what I'm doing is I'm writing it as a prime factorized number, right? If I can do this, then the logic here is that a factor of n will also have possibly the same primes, can only contain the same primes, some combination of those primes. So you basically think prime 1 raised to the power x, prime 2 raised to the power y, prime 3 raised to the power z, some powers, but these powers can only lie between from 0 to c. They can't 0 to their respective powers in n. So since x can only take integer values from 0 to a, long story short, x can take a plus 1 values. Similarly, if you think about y can also go from 0 to b, which means y will have b plus 1 values. And basically, long story short, or in fact maybe I shouldn't have told you this, opens the Pandora's box. If you want to know more about this, check out one of my number system videos. But here basically for this representation, you'll basically say the number of factors is a plus 1 into b plus 1 into c plus 1 and so on and so forth. You basically take the powers of each of its primes, increment it by 1 and multiply all such increments, right? So basically in this question it's saying that from 1 to 16 you have a value n, right? And n has 3 factors, right? Which means 3 would somehow come as the product of those powers, but then 3 itself is prime, which means you can only write it as a product in one way, 1 into 3, which basically means that, and if I got 1 and 3 respectively after incrementing it by 1, I'm already thinking 0 plus 1 into 1 plus 2, right? Maybe I should write it the other way around. Maybe I should write it as 2 plus 1, right? 0 plus 1 into 2 plus 1, which means this is a and this is b. A is equal to 0 means what? It means that all other primes which will have 1 will have a power of 0, except for one particular prime which will have a power of 2, right? So basically n is like the square of a prime number. Because it has 3 factors, n must be a square of a prime. In fact, here is a rule you should remember, right? Just like we're saying that for n which can be written as primes raised to the power abc, the number of factors will be a plus 1 into b plus 1 into c plus 1. Similarly, another thing you can remember is that the number of factors is an odd value. The number of factors will be odd only for sorry for the suspense, only for perfect squares, right? Not really a surprise, because I did mention here, right? N is, you know, the square of a prime, which means n is a perfect square. So basically the question translates, for the number to have three factors, we know that some prime must have a power of 2, which means it's the square of a prime value, right? So how many squares of prime values do you have from 1 to 16? Let me think of the first few primes: 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, etc. If you square them, what happens? 2 square is 4, 3 square is 9, 5 square is 25, 7 square is 49, etc. But the square must lie from 1 to 16, which means it can only possibly take these two values, right? So how many integers have exactly three factors? Answer is 2. There are only two: 2 square and 3 square. No other number will have three factors. In fact, check it out. Na? What about 2 square? 4. 4 will have factors which are 1, 2 and 4. Similarly, 9 will have factors 1, 3 and 9. So squares will have only three factors. Interesting. Interesting fact about perfect squares. Okay, here is the 9th question coming up on your screen. Yeah, I think you guys should try this question. I'm going to start solving it, so if you need time, you should probably pause the video here. If x and y are integers and x minus y is odd, okay, so the difference of two integers is odd. Now let's think about difference, right? The difference is odd only if the numbers are unlike, right? The numbers must be unlike, which means two possibilities: either x is odd and y is even, or x is even and y is odd, right? One of these cases must be true, right? Case A or case B. Then which of the following must be true, right? Which means which of the following is true for both possibilities. X into y is even. Okay, one of them is odd and the other is even. Obviously the product will be even. It's true for both cases. If you add their squares, you'll get an odd value. Okay, odd square plus even square here. Again, ideally I shouldn't be checking, right? But without checking also, if you have x square plus y square, right? This is either going to be odd square plus even square, or even square plus odd square. Now the square of odd will be odd and the square of even will be even, which means their sum will be odd. And similarly, even square is even, odd squared is odd, and even plus odd is also odd. So basically if you add their squares, you will get indeed an odd value. So both statement 1 and 2 are correct, right? A quick glance tells me that it can only now be between D and E, because the other options are obviously untrue. Between D and E, I'll quickly check. What about their sum and squared, right? So what happens when you have odd plus even and you square this value, right? Odd plus even, I know as a sum will be odd. So what happens when you square an odd value? You get an odd number. So this is not true. So obviously answer is option D. Right? I thought this was an easy question. Right? I know it looks like I took a couple of minutes, but really, if this was an exam, I'd probably brush through this question. And I'm sure you will too. Okay, here is question number 10. When 24 is divided by, I'm sorry guys, disclaimer again. Pause it, try it yourself, come back to the solution when you've tried it. When 24 is divided by the positive integer n, so okay, you're dividing 24 by another value, the remainder is 4. Now the moment you see division remainder, you should go back to the division identity. What is the division identity? Dividend equal to divisor into quotient plus the remainder. Yeah. So here dividend, what is being divided? 24 is divided by n, so divisor is n. I don't know what the quotient is, let's call it q only, but you know the remainder is 4. So 24 is divided by n, you get the quotient as 4. Sorry, the remainder as 4. Which of the following about n must be true? So you want to infer something about n. So n into q should be equal to 24 minus 4, that's 20, which basically means that n into q is 20 and n is an integer value. So n and q must be factors of 22, of 20. Okay. Which of the following is true about n? N is even? Well, no, n can be 5. 5 into 4 is 20. So first statement is not necessarily true. N is a multiple of 5. Well, does it need to be a multiple of 5? Well, okay, there is a small inference I also need to draw from here, right? Because the division is happening with n, you can't get a remainder which is equal to n. So basically you'll say the remainder has to be smaller than the divisor, only then the division works, right? So here you'll say n has to be less than 5. Sorry, n, since the divisor is n has to be greater than 4. It cannot be equal to the remainder, so n has to be greater than 4. Right? In other words, basically the remainder will always lie between 0 and the divisor minus 1. And since the divisor here is n, you will say the remainder 4 will lie between 0 and n minus 1, which means n will be greater than 4 plus 1, 5. Right? That's another way of writing it. N is either greater than 5 I mean, this is equality, right? So n is less than or equal to 4, 5 or greater than 4. Either ways, you can write it either of the two ways, right? But I don't need all of that. Let's infer. Let's get into the inference portion. N is not even. Can n be a multiple of 5? Sure, if it's supposed to be more than 5. Let's list out all the factors of 20, right? So factors of 20 are 1, 2, 4, 5, 10 and 20. Those are the factors, and since n must be greater than 4, you can rule out the first two. Greater than 4, you can rule out the first 3, in fact. So all 3 numbers, is n necessarily even? No. Is n a multiple of 5? Yes, looks like. Is n a factor of 20? Yes, we began from there, right? So this is also true. So 2 and 3 are true, which means of the 5 options, I'm going to pick which one? 2 and 3 option C is the correct choice. Alright, here's question number 11. I'm going to try and pick up my pace. I think we still have another 15 questions to go, right? Bear with me, pause the video at appropriate times. If the smaller of two consecutive odd integers is a multiple of 5, you have two consecutive odd integers, one of them is a multiple of 5. So let's say the multiple of 5 is 5x or 5a, and since this is a smaller number, the next number will be, if this is odd, the next number will be 2 more than it. And for this to be odd, only if a is also odd, right? Because if a is even, then 5 into a would be an odd, even value. Okay, so a is odd, we know that. Which of the following cannot be the sum of these two integers? Okay, their sum will be, if you add, you'll get 10a plus 2, right? Which of the following cannot be 10a, right? Let 10a plus 2. Let's say option A. Can 10a plus 2 be minus 8? 2. So which means a will be minus 10 by 10. That's minus 1. Yes, it can be. How about B? 12. So if 10a plus 2 is 12, then a would be, how much is this? 12 minus 2, 10. 10 by 10 will be 1. Okay, a can be 1 as well. How about C? 22. So can 10a plus 2 be equal to 22? Which means a will be 2, sure. Well, all of them are seemingly fitting the bill here. Okay, I almost missed the trick here, right? Remember, you're getting these values, right? And if 10a plus 2 is 252, I'm sure some of you have already figured it out. This is 250 by 10, 25, right? So those are the values that you're comparing, right? These are the values that you're getting for a. Which of these values is not possible? Well, since we've ruled that a is odd, it cannot be 2, it cannot be option C. So the option C is not possible. I didn't really need to try all of them, but I thought it would be a good idea to quickly show you what values you will get. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, time to move on. Question number 12. Uh, what is the greatest, oops, let me check get the options in. Okay, what is the greatest number of identical bouquets that can be made out of, okay, you want to make identical bouquets. I wonder what an identical bouquet is, but you want to make these bouquet out of 21 white and 91 red tulips. Okay, so you have white tulips which are 21 in number, and you have red tulips which are 91 in number, and you want to use all of them. No flowers are to be left out. Okay, bouquets are identical whenever the number of red tulips in the two bouquets is equal and the number of white tulips is also equal, right? Okay, which means if you, let's say, you put in each bouquet, you put A of these white and B of these red, right? It basically says that A plus B will be one bouquet, right? So which means if you have n such bouquets, you will have to put n into A white flowers and n into B white flowers, n into B red tulips, because identical bouquets will have the same equal number of red and white tulips, right? So n each, so A each. But this also means that n into A is 21 and n into B is 91. And so what, and the moment you write this in product terms, you should think n and A are factors of 21 and n and B are factors of 91, which means the question asks you for the greatest number of bouquets, which means the greatest value of n. You want greatest value of n, and you know that n itself is a factor of these two numbers. So you want the greatest factor of 21 and 91, which, put this way, you want the HCF, right? HCF of 21 and 91, this is 7 into 3, this is 7 into 13. Highest common factor is 7. So greatest number of such bouquets, 7 bouquets. Each bouquet will have 3 and 13 white and red flowers respectively. So you'll have 16 flowers per bouquet and 7 such bouquets. 16 into 7 is 112. Indeed, 21 plus 91 is 112. Yeah. Okay, moving on. 13th, if n is a positive integer and the product of all integers from 1 to n inclusive is a multiple of 990. Right? So, okay, product of all integers from 1 to n. So 1 into 2 into 3 all the way till some value n is 900 is a multiple of 990, 990 into x, say, right? And on the left hand side, I'm already thinking that it's like n factorial, right? It does look like n factorial. I don't need to, but it does, seem obvious to me. Then what is the least possible value of n, right? What could possibly be the smallest value that n takes? Right, now you know that this product should contain should make 990, right? So I can see that this is somewhere 10 into 99 and 99 is 9 into 11, right? So this basically becomes 9 into 10 into 11, which means you know that these three integer values should definitely come. And when you're multiplying successive integers, what is the smallest value that you can use for n here, right? What is the smallest value you can use for n? Clearly you want all three to come. The smallest value of n you can use is 11. Does that make sense? Since you want the values 9, 10 and 11, there is no other way of including 11 unless it's a prime number, remember. So you can only get 11 if it includes 11. So you'll have to include 11 integers starting from 1. I hope that's obvious. I'm going to move on to the next question, 14th. If y is the smallest integer such that 3150 multiplied by y, okay, 3150 into y is a square of an integer, is n squared, okay. I mean, whenever multiplication or something like this happens, I like to prime factorize, right? So let's try and prime factorize this. I can see a 0 going away, and then this will be 5 times 5 6 are 30, 5 3s are 15. So it automatically sort of breaks down. This is 9 into 7, right? So 3 square into 7, and this is 5, but 10 is 5 into 2. So basically I'm getting 2 into 3 square into 5 square into 7, right? And this is supposed to be a square, which means every prime factor should become a square, right? So this into some value y makes this a perfect square, which means at bare minimum you want a 2 so that this becomes a square, and you want a 7 so that this becomes a square. So at minimum y should contain 2 into 7. So y must be 14, because y is indeed the smallest value that you want, right? So the smallest value will be 14. It's fairly obvious. Yep. Hope that's clear. Moving on to question number 15. Here are your option choices. Question number 15. A square wooden plaque has a square brass inlay in the center, leaving a wooden strip of uniform width. Okay, so you have a wooden plaque on which you have a brass plaque, and this uniform width is an equal width all across, and the ratio of area of the brass, let's label these areas, right? Let's say this area is A and let's say this area is B. So the ratio of area of the brass, okay, this is the area of the brass A to the wooden area. So wooden area is B. So A by B is given to me as 25 is to 39, right? Now, which means the bigger square, so small square is A, square 1 has an area A, and square 2 will have an area which is A plus B, right? And so here, let's say the sides are S1 and S2, right? So you basically saying A is the side of square 1, so S1 square divided by B, but A plus B will be a perfect square, which means A plus B will be S2 square, which means B will be S2 square minus A. So S2 square minus A, which is S1 square, is 25 is to 39, right? Okay, this is another way of representing the same thing, right? Well, I think you can use either of these, right? Doesn't matter. So here if I cross multiply, right, 39 S1 square, and you'll also have minus 25 S1 square on the other side, right? So you'll get basically 39 S1 square is equal to 25 S2 square minus 25 S1 square. So you can bring this to this side. 25 plus 39 makes 64 S1 square equals 25 S2 square. So which of the following could be the width of the wooden strip, right? Which of the following could be S2? Well, I don't know. S2 can take any value, I guess, right? S2 by S1 will in fact be 64 by 25 square root, which means 8 is to 5, right? Now, some of you might confuse this and say, okay, S2 should be a multiple of 8. No, it basically asks for the width of the wooden strip, right? It asks you only for this width, right? How much would this width be? But it doesn't really matter which is the width, because the width basically is S2 minus S1. How much can it be? Right? If, for example, if the S2 and S1 are 8 and 5, 8 minus 5 is 3, you'd want to pick 3, but why? You could also have, let's say, something like 2.4 and 1.5, right? They are also in the ratio 8 is to 5, but their difference will now be 0.9, right? So it could be anything. So can it be 1? Sure, it can be 1. I mean, there must be some values which, so for example, if I write this as S2 by 1, then I'll get S2 as 1.6. So basically we're saying it can also have sides of 1.6 is to 1. And so the difference will then be 0.6. So oops. Can the difference be 1? Yes, the difference can also be 1. So the trick is to know that it can be all three. Right? I'm not, even if you're still confused, and I sense that that's possible for some of you. Let me quickly explain this all over again. Okay. So basically you're saying you have a square of side A, and inside it you have another square of side B, and this is the uniform width which is constant across, which means the inner square is exactly in the middle, and so this width will in fact be A minus B. It won't actually be A minus B actually. Good. Now that I think about it will be A minus B whole divided by 2, right? So the width is A minus B whole divided by 2, because A minus B will include 2 of those widths. So half of that will be the width that you want. And what's only given to you is the ratio of the areas, ratio of the brass area. Brass area is the inner one. So that will basically be a square minus b square. Oh, sorry, that's going to be b square to the wooden area. The wood is just the boundary, right? So the wood area will be a square minus b square, and this ratio is given to me as 25 is to 39. So now if I cross multiply, I'll get 39b square is equal to 25a square plus 25b square, which means I'll end up getting 25 plus 39, 64b square equal to 25a square. You take a square root and this becomes 8b is equal to 5a. Yeah. So which and you know, you can use ratios here. A by b is basically 8 is to 5. So basically it can be any values 8x and 5x which can have a ratio 8 is to 5. And so width will then be 8x minus 5x whole divided by 2. So the width will be 3x by 2, 1.5x, right? So can 1.5x be 3? Sure it can. Can it be 1? Sure. If 1.5x needs to be 1, then x will be 10 by 15. X will be 2/3 of an inch. Yeah, it can be 2/3 of an inch. Why not? So it can be any of these three values. So the answer will be option E. It's an interesting problem. Okay, here is question number 16. For positive integers a and b, the remainder when a is divided by b is equal to the remainder when b is divided by a. Okay, so whether you divide, you know, b by a, or you divide a by b, basically the remainder is supposed to be the same remainder. Okay, now allow yourself to think about this for a moment, right? Well, first of all, when I'm dividing, one number is supposed to be bigger than the second number, right? What you're dividing by is a smaller, the divisor is always smaller than the, does it have to be smaller? No, it can also be equal to the dividend. Okay, so basically a must be less than equal to b and b must also be less than equal to a, because I mean you are dividing both by each other, both numbers by each other. So a must be, but then both these conditions are true only if the numbers are indeed equal to each other. You can see a less than equal to b less than equal to a leaves you with only one choice, a and b should be equal. So the numbers must be equal. Only then can you divide each by the other. Right? So the numbers are equal. Which of the following could be a possible value of a into b, which means a into a, which means a square. Which of the following can be a square? Only 36. Because remember, why can a square? Now some of you might ask, why can't a square be 24? Why can't a be the square root of 24? Well, if it's the square root of 24, will it be an integer? No, it won't. So for integer values, it has to be a perfect square. So only 3 is possible. I'm going to pick amongst the 5 choices, I'm going to pick option B. Okay, here's question 17. If n is a positive integer and n square is divisible by 72. Okay, n is a positive integer, n square, when you say is divisible by 72, it will be 72 into something, right? Let's say it's 72 into y. I mean, I'm just assuming a value. Okay, so n square is 72 into y, then the largest positive integer that must divide n. Okay, this is tricky. Let's first do the same thing. I'll want to prime factorize this. So 72 is, 36 into 2. So or 8 into 9 actually. 8 into 9 is better. 2 cube 8 into 9, which is 3 square, into y must become a perfect square. Again, I'm thinking on the same lines. If n is a perfect square, then each of these should, also have power of 2, right? So since this is 2 cube, I know I'll need definitely y must contain a 2, right? The largest positive integer that must divide n, that's the question, right? Now for this to be a perfect square, you already have 72. What should you multiply with 72 to make a perfect square? You can possibly do 72 into 2, and that becomes just, the suggestion here, that becomes, if n square is 144, then n will be 12. So the largest positive integer that must divide n, the largest positive integer that must divide n is, has to be 12. Yeah, does that make sense? Because if for example, if you can't multiply it with 2, what else will you multiply it with? You'll multiply it with 2 into, for example, if you multiply it with 3, If y is not 2, y is 2 into 3. So 72 into 2 into 3. But then that's not a perfect square. You'll have to have 3 square, right? If you take 3 square, then n square will be 72 into 2, 144. 12 square into 3 square. So 12 square into 3 square makes this 36 square, right? If n square is 36, n will be, if n is 36, it's divisible by 12, it's still not divisible by, 24, right? So the largest value that it must always divide, if it, you can see if it's not 24, the largest value cannot be 36. It can only be smaller than 24. It can only be 12, right? So that clarifies in case you had any doubt. I hope it does. Okay, moving on. Question 18. Bouquets are to be made using white tulips and red tulips, and the ratio of the number of white to the number of red tulips. So white is to red is to be the same in each bouquet. Okay. Basically, same number of flowers in each bouquet as the next one. Okay, but it doesn't actually mean same. But it does mean greater, right? So for example, I could basically take 1 and 2 on the first bouquet, and I could take 2 and 4 on the second bouquet, and it would still work out. Maybe I could take 3 and 6, that could still work out, right? But then if this is bouquet 1 and this is bouquet 2, then number of bouquets will actually not get maximized. For the number of bouquets to be the greatest number, you'll basically have to take their smallest numbers in the numerator and denominator. So smallest numbers will mean basically you just take the simplest values, smallest values. Okay, so 15 and 85 red tulips are away. 15 white and red tulips is 85. Yeah? And you want to make bouquets by using all of the tulips that are available to you, right? So you want to use all of these. I have 100 tulips available to you. You want to make bouquets using all of them, and each bouquet should have flowers in the same ratio. We've already established, forget ratio, the number of white flowers in each bouquet and the number of red flowers in each bouquet should be equal, right? It should not be different from each other. It should be equal. Ideally, it should take the smallest value possible, right? So if they are supposed to be equal, then let's say you take A white flowers and you take B red flowers in each bouquet, then n bouquets if you can make, then A into n will be 15 and B into n should be 85, right? Because you use the same number of flowers in each bouquet, right? So n is hence a factor of 15, n is also a factor of 85, and the smallest factor you can choose. Well, I mean, you're surely tempted to make only, right? N must take the greatest value. The greatest number of bouquets means n is the maximum possible value. And if n is maximum, then n is now a factor of 15 and 85, and it takes the maximum value where want the n must be the HCF. And HCF of 15 and 85 is indeed 5. Right, because 15 basically is 5 into 3 and 85 is 5 into 17. So you can't factorize it further. So 5 is the highest common factor that's available. You can make 5 bouquets. So what is the greatest number of bouquets? 5. Right. Alright, here's question number 19th. It's quite an interesting one actually. So do pause it, try it out, and then come watch the solution, because it's an interesting question. Well, the first thing I should notice in this question is that you have both values very, very close to 1, right? And a quick glance at the option choices, all of them are written in this scientific notation, 10 to the power minus 8, 10 to the power minus 4. So again, and the numerators are very close to 1, so I can, I do want to write each of these in the scientific notation, right? So basically I can do so by, writing the numerator as 0.9. Okay, let's not do that, right? Instead of writing it as in the scientific notation, I'll say the numerator here, first value will be 1 minus 0. How many digits are there? 3, 6 into 8. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. divided by 1 plus 0.0001. So notice 8 digits and 4 digits on the top and bottom. Here too you'll have 8 digits at the top, so this will be 1 minus, but now you're not subtracting 0.001, you're subtracting 0.00009. So 0.7 zeros and 9 divided by 1 plus 0.0003. Now notice something. If I square 3, I get 9, and so if I square 3 with 4 decimal places, I'll get 9 with 8 decimal places. Oh, okay. So basically the numerator, and here too it's identical, right? If I square 0.0001, you'll get 0.008 times 1. So 1, basically I can write this as 0.0001 whole square divided by 1 plus 0.0001, and this one is 0.43 squared, and there sum at the bottom. Yeah, and a square minus b square basically is the identity. So this basically becomes 1 plus 0.0001 into 1 minus 0.0001 divided by 1 minus, I mean, I'm writing it just so you can believe it will get cancelled out. And similarly in the next term you will get 1 plus 0.0003, 4 zeros, into 1 minus 0.0003. Yeah, and you can see this will also get cancelled out. So what you're left with is 1 minus 0.0009 and 1 subtract from. So basically this becomes plus. So 0.0003 minus 0.0001, that's 0.0002. That's like 2 into 10 raised to the power minus 4, and that's option D. Right? I hope you had fun solving this. It's an interesting question, I thought, right? A very tricky question at that. Right, let's move on. Question 20. A positive integer n is a perfect square provided the sum of all the positive factors of n, sum of all factors, okay, sum of factors of n, and n is a perfect square, is equal to 2n. Okay, sum of all factors is 2n. So what is the sum of reciprocals of all? So okay, this is interesting. If you add all the factors, let's say the factors are 1, okay, I don't even know what the factors are, but let's say the factors are a, b, c, d, e, right? So I'm going to think, okay, a, b, c, d, e has a sum till, let's say, some value, and this has a sum of 2n, and find the sum of reciprocals of all these factors, right? What would be 1 by a plus 1 by b, 1 by c, and so on, right? Now if a is a factor of 2n, then a into something will be 2n, right? In fact, since you want, okay, and you want to do all of this for something called a perfect number, which I completely forgot. A number is a perfect number if the sum of all its positive factors is equal to double itself. So the example they're giving is 28, right? So 28, let's list out the factors of 28. Say for example 1, 2, 4, 7, 14 and 28. Yeah? And if you add, what happens? 21 plus 6, 27, plus 1, 28, plus 28 is 56. It does come out to be 56. But there's one other thing you should notice here, right? So 1 into 28 is 28, 2 into 14 is 28, and 4 into 7 is 28. So the way the numbers are stacking up, they're also in pairs. The factors are also in pairs. So basically the question is asking me about 1 by 1 plus 1 by 2 plus 1 by 4. This is what it's asking me, right? So don't let this intimidate you. You basically will say, what is the LCM going to be? 28. And so what will I get? 1 into the other factor, 2 into the other factor, 4 into other factor, 7 into other factor, 14 into other factor, and 1 into. So you will end up getting you will end up getting all the factors. So the numerator will still be the sum of factors 2n. The denominator is the number itself. So the ratio that the question asks, the sum that the question asks will be 2. Right? This question asked you about 28, so we were able to take the, the values. What I was doing here was, in general terms, if you take the LCM, you'll get n, because these are all factors of n, aren't they? So their LCM must be n. So a into something makes n. If a into something makes n, that something will also be a factor, right? That's what ends up happening in such a case, right? So if you are given the sum of all factors as a value, then the sum of reciprocals will be that sum divided by n, right? You can just remember that. Okay, 21. If n is an integer greater than 3, which of the following must be divisible by? N is an integer greater than 6, which of the following must be divisible by 3? I would rather try, So let me try some values. If n is, let's say, 7. Okay, 7, 8, 3. This is going to be 7, 9. Okay, this seems to be too complicated, right? Trying values, right? Even as I try, I can see random, this becomes very random, right? And I don't know. Maybe I can try 3 values and then give up. Which of the following must be divisible by 3? Okay, by taking 7 plus 3, 10, 7 minus 5, okay, like 7 minus 5 is 2. Okay, this one isn't. So if it's not, divisible by 3, it doesn't necessarily need to be divisible. This can't be the answer basically, because the question says which of the following must be divisible by 3. So it must be true for all values of n, right? If this is not true for one value of n, it won't be true for all. Similarly here, 7 into 11 into 5. Okay, this one also gets ruled out. This is 7, 7 plus 5, 12, 7 minus 6, 1. Okay, so this one stays. How about if I put n as 8, right? And I try this now only for A, B, and E. 8, 8 plus 1, 9, 8 minus 4, 4. Okay, this one is option B, 8, 8 plus 2, 10, 8 minus 1, 9. Yes, this one also stays. And 8, 8 plus 5, 13, 8 minus 6, 2. Okay, not divisible. So E is also ruled out. If I put n as 9, okay, 9 into 9 plus 1, 10, 9 minus 4, 5. This one is, okay, this one is 2. 9, 9 plus 2, 11, 9 minus 1, 8. Okay. What if I put n as 10? 10, 10 plus 1, 11. And 10 minus 4, 6. Yes, it is. And this one will become 10. 10 plus 2, 12. 10 minus 1, 9. Okay, it's still, yeah, so there's, you can see that plugging in values is slightly complicated. Yeah. Which of the following values must be divisible by 3? It says. Well, you know what? I think the both A and B are always divisible by 3. You know why I say that? Okay. Option B can be rewritten as n minus 1 into n plus, okay, n plus 2. Yeah, okay. Now notice something. N plus 2, and what's missing here is basically n plus 1, right? Now 3 possibilities, right? Either this is a multiple of 3, or this is a multiple of 3, or this is a multiple of 3, right? Now I don't know how to explain this to you guys, but essentially the logic that you use is that if you take three consecutive integers, then one of them is divisible by 3. Must be divisible by 3. That's the logic you use, right? So if you look at the, the first choice, right? Let me erase this and then explain it to you why I think A and B are both correct. Right. So, three consecutive integers, right? So you think about it, n into, and why is that, right? Because if you take three consecutive integers, you'll obviously get one of them, will either be 3 or a multiple of 3, because every third consecutive number is a multiple of 3. But think about it, if n and you have n plus 1, but you don't have n plus 2, right? What you have is n minus 4, right? So you're basically saying these are two consecutive integers. You're going 1, 2, n minus 1, n minus 2, n minus 3, and n minus 4. This is the value that you're using, right? But so either this is a multiple of 3 or this one or this one, right? N plus 2. Now if n plus 2 is a multiple of 3, assume that n and n plus 1 are not. If n plus 2 is a multiple of 3, then so would this blank. And so if you go 3 more places back, so would this one, right? So either n is a multiple of 3 or n plus 1 is, or n plus 2 is, in which case n minus 4 would be, right? So option A will always be divisible by 3. But so will option B. Check this out. N, you have a blank, then you have n plus 2, and then you also have n minus 1, right? So basically 3 consecutive integers must be divisible by 3, which means either of these 3 must be divisible by 3. So first, one possibility is that n minus 1 is divisible by 3, in which case the product will be divisible by 3, or n is itself it is a multiple of 3, okay? But what if the blank is a multiple of 3? Then how do you know that the product of these 3 values is a multiple of 3? Now think about it. If the blank is a multiple of 3, okay, then the one following it, or the one preceding it, or the one even before it, if this is a multiple of 3, then the next multiple will come here, or the previous multiple will come here. So indeed, if this blank is a multiple, then none of these 3 numbers will be a multiple of 3. So for example, if I put n as, oh okay, wait, that's why I'm wondering why my prophecy isn't holding true. It's n plus 2. Yeah, this one won't, no? Yeah, for example, I don't know why I missed this, but if you put n as 8, then this will be 8 into 10 into 7. It's not divisible by 3. So B is also ruled out. Actually, the answer is A, right? Whether even if you plug in values, you will get the answer as A, right? But the other way of figuring it out is by thinking of consecutive multiples, which I'm sorry guys, I think I complicated things for you, but no worries, just plug in values. I think that's the way to go in this particular question. Okay, here's question 22. I think we've overshot time a little bit, but it's okay. We're just about to get done with our time. Set X consists of 8 consecutive integers. It consists of any 8 consecutive integers, which means I can think of some 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, these are 8. So let's say set X consists of this. Let's put these inside a set. Y consists of all integers that result from adding 4 to each integer. If you add 4 to each integer, then the numbers you'll generate will be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Adding 4 to each of the integers, and all integers that result from, subtracting 4 from each of these. So if you start subtracting from this, and 8 minus 4 is 4, 8 minus 7, subtracting 4, sorry, 8 minus 4, 4, 7 minus 4, 3, 6 minus 4, 2, 1, 0, minus 1, minus 2, and minus 3. Yeah, so this is what y would be, right? You can see that you do get the original 8 numbers, but you add 4 and you know, subtract. So 4 more and 4 less, which means you'll get 8 more integers. How many more integers? 8 more. Yeah, much easier to just try them out. Yeah. Okay, 23rd. If x, y, and z are positive integers such that x is not a factor of y and y is a multiple of, such that, sorry, x is a factor of y. So x basically will be a into y. And x is a multiple of z, which means x into something will make, x is a multiple of z, sorry. Okay, I completely misrepresented. X is a factor of y, which means x into something will make y, and x is a multiple of z, which means x can be made by multiplying z with something, let's say that is b, right? And so what I can do is I can substitute this in the third equation, and you combine them, you'll get z into b into a is equal to y, right? So these are values I have values for, equations between xy, yz and xz. Okay, then which of the following is not necessarily an integer? Let's check this out. X plus z by z, option A. Let me try it out here. Option A. This is going to be, if I break it down, I can write this as x by z plus 1. And what is x by z? Let's go back to the relationship. X by z will be b. So I'm getting 1 plus b. B must be an integer. So this one is an integer. Right? Okay, option B. Again, break this down. You'll get y by x plus z by x. Right? What is y by x? Yes, that's a. What is z by x? Z by x is, z by x will be 1 by b. Yeah. So this doesn't seem to be right. About option C, x by z plus y by z. Right? X upon z will be b. X upon z will be b, and y upon z will be ab. So b plus ab, yes, this is also correct. About D, x into y by z. Okay, so I can write this as x into y by z, and what was y by z? ab. So this is like x into ab. That is also an integer. All three of them are integers. About option E, x into y by z. So I can write this as any, you can take any one of these, right? Y into z upon x. So what is z upon x? Z upon, okay, not a good representation maybe, right? So instead I'll write this as z into y upon x. What is y upon x? Y upon x is a. So this becomes z into a. Yeah, also an integer. So you can see only option B is not necessarily an integer. Other values do give integer results. Okay, Club X has more than 10 but less than 40 members. Sometimes members sit at tables with 3 members at one table and 4 members at each of the other tables. Sometimes, okay, so basically all the members that X has, they can either sit in groups of 3 and 4, some at 3 and some at 4, and other times they sit, some at, some of them sitting in 3 members at a table and 5 members at other tables, which basically means that basically, let's say n is the number of members, then n will be some multiple of 3 plus some multiple of 4, right? N can also be some multiple of 3 and the remaining will be multiples of 5, and it could also be, if they sit at tables with 6 members at each table except 1 and fewer than 6 members at that table, at that one table. So basically one table will have, if you write it as 6 times, it will be, let's say, Z tables, and then the last table left will have some value left, let's say K, and K has to have fewer than 6 members. Right? Then question says how many members will be at the table that has fewer than, what is the value of K basically? What is K? That's the question here. Right? So what I can do here, So you can, I mean, I guess what you can do is you can do a little bit of hit and trial in this question. Yeah, and because that's what I intend to do. So I'm thinking multiple of 3 plus multiple of 4 has to add up to a number between 10 and 40, right? More than 10, less than 40. So I'm already thinking of multiple of 3, 5, 4 and 6 in that range, right? So multiples of 3. So let's start with 6, right? So we're thinking more than 10, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. Okay. So it's going to be around this, right? Number of tables here. And if, around between 12 and 18, if you consider multiples of 3, right? And want some which are a multiple of 4, then clearly I'm thinking 12 plus 4, 16 ho sakta hai. It could also be 12 plus 8. Too many possibilities are springing up here. It's actually a very tricky question, unless you know the property of remainders, and that's the tricky part here. Well, I did say hit and trial, right? So 25, that's the magic number, right? Because I can write this as 9 plus 16, a multiple of 3 and a multiple of 4 when added. I can also write it as 15 plus 10, a multiple of 3 plus a multiple of 5. So basically, it's like they can sit in 3 tables of 3 each, and then 4 tables of 4 members each, or they can sit at 5 tables with 3 members each, and just occupy 2 tables with 5 members each, or if they sit all in 6, all except 1 in 6 tables. So you're basically saying this is like 24 plus 1, because that's the only way that they occupy 4 tables of size 6, right? That's like 4 into a table of size 6, and then only 1 table left which has the 1 member. So the correct answer here is option A. It's slightly tricky, quite tricky, I would say. But I mean, if you have your wits about you, this kind of a question, right? Know that instead of theorizing this problem, we could just consider and try and, I don't know about you guys, but when I stare at this equation, I'm already thinking 3s and 4s added, Pythagoras theorem, right? Triplet 3, 4, 5. I'm already thinking 3, 4, 5, and 3 square plus 4 square is 25. So that's the way that 25 sort of jumps up. So the more you are comfortable with integer values and these integer relationships, and have your wits about you, you can solve such a question. Right, last question of the day. If m is an integer and m is 10 to the power 32 minus 32, yeah. So what is the sum of all the digits of m? Well, if you imagine 10 to the power 32, it will have plenty of zeros, and then right at the end you are subtracting 32 from it, right? So what ends up happening is that 10 minus 2 is 8, 9 minus 3 is 6, and then you'll have 9, 9, 9, 9, 9 for under all zeros you'll end up writing 9, right? So basically, originally it had 32 zeros. I've already used 2 of them, which means you're left with 28 zeros, and under each zero you'll write a 9, so 28 nines, right? And you have a 6 and 8. So what is the sum of digits of n? So sum of digits, if this is the value of m, the sum of digits will be add 9 to itself 28 times. So 9 into 28, and then add a 6 and a 8. Yeah, so 9 8s are 72. 252 plus 14. What do I get? 266. Okay, that's weird. Okay, let me quickly check what happens if it was 10 power 4 minus 32, for example, right? So I'd write 4 zeros and 32, and I'd get 68 here, and I'd get 99 here, right? So 9 into 2, 2 because you had 4 zeros, so 4 minus 2 zeros that you've already used, so 2 into 9 plus 14. So this should be, oops, 32 minus 2 digits I've used, we will have 39s, right? Big silly mistake, right? So 9 into 30 plus 14, that's 270 plus 14, that's 284, right? That's option D, right? Well, I think right at the end I've also illustrated that you've got to be lucky if you make silly mistakes, because if 266 had been there in the option choices, I would have very confidently marked it, because the logic I used was correct, but then I did make a very silly mistake, or almost did make a very silly mistake here. So hopefully you guys will, remember my mistake and learn from it, right? Don't make sure that you repeat a mistake like this. All right, well, that is the end of this session. I don't want to drum an already beaten one again and again, but I will say Unacademy is a great platform. I think you guys should definitely try checking it out. 3 reasons I'd give you. One, flexibility. You can choose educators, you can choose to study in whatever language, you can choose to study at whatever time. So immense flexibility. Two, immense amount of interaction, right? You can ask questions, you can post your doubts as images, they can be pulled up on screen by the educator and answered live in a session. You can also do, educator can also ask you questions and get answers from you. So there's like two-way communication that happens in a live lecture. It's great for you. And 3, practice, right? The third reason is that you can practice, you can benchmark in all the mocks and scholarship tests and other topic tests. You can get an all India viewing. It is an all India offering. So do check it out, right? 3 very good reasons to try the Unacademy app. Many subscription plans shown here. Do check out. I would really urge you to consider at the very least one of these 3 options. Don't think anything that is under 6 months. In fact, I would suggest you think about the 12 and the 24-month plans, because you don't spend a whole lot more, but you do get a validity which is a whole lot more. So think about it and get a 10% discount by using my referral code AV01, right? So don't forget to do that. Scholarship test coming at 5 p.m. Every Sunday. So it's going to happen on every Sunday this month till the CAT. So don't forget to check it out. Don't forget to avail of this opportunity to win a few exciting prizes. Happy Diwali to everybody. That's my time. If you like this video, do share it, do like it, do comment in the chat if you want more such videos. This was Anand Venkatesan signing off. Happy Diwali once again to everybody. Be safe and all the best.